My parents left me a rundown cabin in Alaska, while my brother got a $1.2 million mansion in Miami. My fiancé called me a pathetic loser and left me for him. Heartbroken, I went to the cabin. That's when I discovered something worth $500 million. Can you imagine the sting of losing everything that truly matters? My parents vanished without a trace in the Alaskan wild, and when their will was read, my brother inherited a lavish Miami mansion, leaving me with nothing but a crumbling, forgotten cabin. But the true gut punch came that very night, when my fiancée shattered my world, slamming her ring on the table and running off, with my brother. My name is Frances Nonick, and I was born in Fairbanks, Alaska, a place where the bone-chilling cold was a constant, unforgiving companion. Our wooden cabin, really just a single room with a cramped attic where I used to curl up, teetered on the edge of a vast forest. Pines stood like ancient sentinels, guarding secrets only the land and sky knew. In winter, I'd often wake with numb fingers, even buried deep in worn blankets, listening to the wind howl through every crack. It was a harsh life, but it was all I knew. My father, Elias Nonick, was a native Alaskan of Inuit descent. He was tall, sturdy, with eyes sharp as a blade and a deep voice, solid as stone. He'd hunted, guided expeditions, then worked at a grueling sawmill. He never complained. For him, labor was a way to prove one's worth to this land. The land is our mother, he'd say. You must respect it, for it sustains us. But it can also swallow us whole if we betray it. My mother, Kelly, was his opposite, gentle, with golden hair and a smile warm as the rarest Alaskan sun. She worked as an office clerk. She loved me. I knew it from her touch, from the warm bread she'd slip into my hand, but she always supported my father's strictness. Your father wants what's best for you, she'd remind me when I grumbled about chopping firewood in sub-zero temperatures. We were poor. Not starving, not in rags, but every single penny had to be weighed. I remember following my father into the forest, a tiny axe on my shoulder, chopping dry branches. I'd wade into freezing rivers, my feet turning to stone, just to catch a few salmon for dinner. Once I even secretly scavenged scrap metal to sell, just so my mother could buy a little extra salt or sugar. Back then, it wasn't hardship, it was just life. How Mother Alaska demanded we live. My father taught me everything about survival. By 4, I could start a fire with flint. By 6, build a blizzard-proof shelter. By 8, track a moose. But more than skills, he taught me a philosophy. Never take more than the land allows. Take only what you need, leave the rest for tomorrow. My childhood wasn't fancy toys or lavish trips. It was the boundless forest, the icy river, and nights huddled by the fire, listening to my father's stories of Inuit ancestors, wind spirits, and Mother Earth. Those years forged me into a quiet, reserved boy who grew up fast. Other kids called me Forest Boy for my worn jacket and calloused hands. I didn't care. I was different. While they dreamed of cars, I dreamed of deep forest journeys, just me and the land's whispers. That harsh childhood gave me an unyielding will, a quiet pride. I never imagined my greatest challenge wouldn't be the cold, but my own family. Everything changed when I was 9. Overnight, it was as if Mother Alaska had finally smiled. My father, Elias, caught the eye of a big mining company. They needed someone who knew every hill, every stream, and my father, with his razor-sharp memory for terrain, was perfect. The salary was more than we'd ever dreamed. We paid off debts. My mother stopped counting every penny. For the first time, we escaped poverty's shadow. We left Fairbanks, the old cabin, and moved to a new house in Anchorage, a city of lights and warmth, where the wind didn't sneak through cracks. My mother opened a small diner, Kelly's Kitchen, and the aroma of fresh bread drew customers from everywhere. She smiled more, her eyes lighting up at the brimming cash register. That same year, my younger brother, Curtis, was born. Golden-haired like our mother, with big, sparkling eyes. Curtis arrived when money wasn't an issue. He grew up in a warm house, with a room full of toys I never imagined at his age. I remember pushing his stroller, watching him giggle at a brand-new stuffed bear. I wasn't jealous. Truly, he was my little brother and I loved him. I loved teaching him to tie his shoes or read clouds. But as he grew, I saw the stark differences between us, between the worlds we were raised in. I knew the bone-chilling cold, chopping firewood, my father's harsh lessons of survival and preserving nature. Curtis never knew those nights without firewood, never waded into an icy river for fish. Our parents, busy with their new prosperity, didn't have time to teach him what they'd ingrained in me. Instead, they compensated with things. New shoes every season, a shiny bicycle, even a small TV. Whenever Curtis wanted something, my mother would smile and nod. And my father, though still stern, rarely said no. He's still young, let him enjoy himself, my mother would say when I pointed out Curtis never did chores. Curtis didn't just grow up with abundance, he grew up believing everything came easily. At school, he was the center of attention, with expensive clothes and a confident air, like the world revolved around him. They called him the Prince of Anchorage. And he loved it. The praise showing off his new watch. Sometimes, when I looked at him, he felt like a stranger. I didn't blame our parents. They only wanted to give him what I never had. But I slowly realized their indulgence had planted a dangerous seed. Curtis didn't value what he had. He took everything for granted. Money, clothes, even our parents' love. Once, I saw him toss aside a brand new jacket because of a small scratch. "Mom will buy me another," he shrugged. I stayed silent, remembering my father teaching me to mend clothes, to cherish what I had. The differences became more pronounced in my teenage years. I still woke early to help my father fix fences. Curtis slept until noon, then ran off with friends, laughing loudly. I still loved the forest, the wind's whisper. Curtis loved city lights, noisy bars, parties where he could show off. I lived by my father's discipline. Curtis lived as if the world existed to serve him. Once, I tried to talk to him. "Curtis," I began, "have you ever thought about learning to fish or set up camp like Dad taught me?" He smirked. "Why bother, bro? Mom and Dad have money now. We don't need to live like forest people anymore." His words cut like a knife. Not because they hurt me, but because I realized he didn't understand, and perhaps never would. An invisible distance grew between us. I loved him, but we walked different paths. I was a man of the forest, of Mother Earth, of honest lessons. He was a man of city lights, of glamour, of things that came too easily. I thought we could still hold hands, despite our differences. But then Amber entered my life, and I learned love could be a flame that warms, but also a storm that burns away trust. I met Amber one summer afternoon in Anchorage. I was helping my mother at the diner, the smell of fresh bread lingering. She walked in, brown hair, eyes blue as a glacial lake, a smile that lit up the room. "Black coffee and toast, please," she said, soft but confident. I wasn't easily smitten. Life had taught me to guard my heart, but something about Amber. Maybe it was how she sat absorbed in her Robert Frost book, or how she called my mother, Aunt Kelly, with natural warmth. Or maybe it was just that she felt different. "Good book?" I asked, mustering courage. She smiled. "Pretty good. Do you like poetry?" I shook my head, embarrassed. Not much for poetry, but I love the forest and what he writes about. The wind, earth, tree shadows. Things I see every day. "A forest guy, huh?" she teased, playful but kind. I laughed, feeling lighter. From then on, we talked. Amber was from a comfortable Anchorage family, but she didn't brag. She dreamed of being a journalist, of traveling the world, telling stories of forgotten people. "People like you," she said once, by the river, who lived true to themselves, not chasing false glamour. I was drawn to her. She didn't laugh when I spoke of chopping wood or tracking deer. She listened, eyes lit up, living my stories. When I spoke of Mother Earth, she took my hand. "You're different, Francis. You have strength." My heart raced. Someone finally saw the real me. We fell in love. My life felt illuminated. I took her into the forest, taught her to pitch a tent, spot tracks. She laughed, trying to start a fire, smoke billowing. I taught her to listen to the wind. She taught me to open up. I told her about my harsh childhood, my father's stories, the quiet pride of surviving Alaska's cold. She hugged me, whispering, "You're stronger than anyone I've ever met." But as our love deepened, I saw changes. She grew more ambitious, craving more than Anchorage. Big cities, prestigious newsrooms, luxurious apartments. At first, I thought her ambition was a strength, like my resilience. But slowly, she started comparing. And painfully, the person she compared me to was Curtis. Curtis, now in his 20s, was Anchorage's epitome of success. Sleek sports car, tailored suits, glittering watches, a beachfront apartment our parents bought him, where he threw extravagant parties. His friends were the city's young elite. For Curtis, life was a stage, and he always had to be the star. Amber began to see me differently. Her gaze would drift when I spoke of the forest, of Mother Earth. She started looking at Curtis, my spoiled younger brother, with an admiration she'd never shown me. She was drawn to his glamour. One afternoon, walking along the coast, we saw Curtis by his car, laughing loudly with friends. Amber stopped, looked at him, then turned to me. "You see your brother," she said, her voice tinged with that admiration I dreaded. "He knows how to live. He knows how to make people notice." Her words were a small, sharp knife. I tried to keep my voice steady. "Curtis has always been like that. He has his way, I have mine." But she didn't stop. Days later, she'd pierce my heart. "Why do you live so small, Francis?" she asked, her eyes seeing me like a puzzle she couldn't solve. "You don't know how to enjoy life. You don't show off. Don't you see Curtis? He lives big." I stayed silent, my hand tightening around my coffee mug, seeing her eyes grow distant. Amber criticized me, not with blunt words, but with subtle remarks and disappointed sighs. "You lack ambition," she said by the river. "You could do so much more. Why aren't you like Curtis, with money, status, everything that makes people respect you?" I wanted to shout that I didn't need respect, that I didn't want to be Curtis, that my worth wasn't in cars, but I only stared at the water, feeling a block of ice pressing down on my heart. To Amber, living big meant flaunting wealth, spending lavishly, commanding attention. She wanted the spotlight, to stand beside a man who made the world turn and look. And I, with my old jacket, rough hands, dreams of the forest, couldn't give her that. The cracks were forming, growing wider each day, beyond repair. Amber wasn't just comparing me, she was being drawn into his world. She no longer saw me as strong, but as lacking, living small. I tried to hold on, but I never expected that before I could salvage our love, a greater storm would crash into my life, sweeping away everything I thought was certain. My parents went missing, leaving behind a void colder than any Fairbanks winter. I was 30 when the news arrived. Early winter morning, snow falling lightly. I was at my mother's diner. The phone rang. A stranger's voice, dry and emotionless. "Are you Francis Nonick? Your parents, Elias and Kelly Nonick, have gone missing after a plane crash. Wreckage found near the Canadian border, but no sign of bodies or survivors." The world stopped. I stood there, rag in hand, all sounds fading. The officer's tone carried no hope. I hung up, an icy weight crushing my chest. I didn't cry. I didn't know what to do with such vast, cold pain. I called Curtis. He was at a bar, loud music in the background. "What did you say?" he asked, distracted. When I repeated the news, he went quiet, then said, "Yeah, okay. You handle it. I'm busy." He hung up, leaving me with a cold beep. The days that followed were a foggy nightmare. Media screamed, "Alaska couple missing." People came to the diner, hugged me, offered comfort, but I felt only emptiness. Amber stayed by my side, at least at first. She held my hand, whispering promises, but her eyes were distant. While I drowned in grief, Curtis acted strangely. He showed up at the diner, impeccably dressed. "How's it going, bro?" he asked, insincere. "Aren't you sad?" I asked, my voice hoarse. He shrugged, flashing an enigmatic smile. "Sure, but life goes on, you know. Mom and Dad would want that." I couldn't fathom his calm. Then I overheard him talking on the phone, voice brimming with excitement. "Yeah, the will's probably going to be read soon. Hopefully, there's something worthwhile, right?" My hand gripped the table. Curtis wasn't just calm, he was thinking about inheritance. Weeks later, the court declared my parents deceased. Death certificates, cold and official. I didn't want to believe it, but the red seals and signatures left no room for denial. A small memorial was held by the river where my father fished. People lit candles, sharing memories of my parents. I stood silently, realizing they were part of this community. But when the last candle flickered out, I was alone with a void nothing could fill. Amber's presence only deepened the pain. "Francis, you have to be strong," she said, but her eyes looked elsewhere. I kept going to the diner, but my mind was lost in the forests I roamed with my father. I dreamed of them every night, but woke to the cold truth. They were gone. And I didn't know how to keep living. Then, on a gloomy afternoon, the Anchorage sky heavy with clouds mirroring my sorrow, the phone rang. A polite but cold voice, "Francis Nonick, this is Gunnar Holmes, your family's lawyer. I need you and your brother Curtis to come to my office tomorrow morning for the reading of your parents' will." A chill swept through me. I called Curtis. "The will," he said, his voice brimming with excitement that made me shudder. "Great, bro. Finally, something worth looking forward to." He hung up, leaving me with a gnawing unease. The next morning, I arrived at Gunnar Holmes' elegant office. Curtis showed up late, striding in, sleek black suit, hair perfectly styled, a confident smile like he already knew. "Hey, bro," he said, clapping my shoulder like we were close friends, not brothers facing a life-altering moment. The meeting room was stifling. Gunnar, silver-haired, gold-rimmed glasses, sat with a thick stack of documents. "Francis, Curtis," he began, voice steady. "Today, we will read the will of Elias Nonick and Kelly Nonick. I offer my condolences, but as per your parents' wishes, I will now read what they have left behind." My heart pounded. Curtis sat upright, eyes gleaming. Gunnar opened the file. His first words hit like a cold gust of wind. "To our youngest son, Curtis Nonick, we leave the beachfront mansion in Miami, valued at over $1.2 million, along with liquid assets, including cash, stocks, and several bank accounts." The room seemed to hold its breath. Curtis let out a small, triumphant laugh. Gunnar continued, calm. "To our eldest son, Francis Nonick, we leave the wooden cabin in the remote forest near Fairbanks, Alaska, where our family lived in our youth." He paused, looking at me. I said nothing. The cabin, where I'd huddled, where my father taught me, where my mother sang me lullabies. It was now just a dilapidated legacy. Something no one wanted. I felt disowned, as if all my efforts, the lessons, were meaningless. Curtis looked at me, his smile wider, dripping with smugness. "Well, bro," he mocked, "that cabin's perfect for you. Forest guy, right?" I only felt betrayed, not just by Curtis, but by our parents. That evening, I returned to my small apartment, carrying a heavy pain. Amber was waiting, sitting on the sofa, her eyes devoid of warmth. "So, how'd it go?" she asked, cold. I recounted everything. When I mentioned the cabin, she laughed. Not joyful, but bitter, scornful. "A rotting wooden cabin," she said, standing, hands on her hips. "That's all you got, Francis? Curtis gets $1 million mansion, and you get a pile of broken wood." I tried to explain I didn't care about money, but she wouldn't listen. She paced, her voice rising. "Don't you see? Curtis knows how to live, how to win. And you cling to that small life, holding on to your forest, your Mother Earth nonsense. But where has it gotten you? A crumbling cabin." She stopped, staring at me, eyes flashing with disappointment. "You're a loser, Francis. You'll never measure up to your brother." Her words were a blizzard, sweeping away my last hope. I stood silent as she slammed the engagement ring on the table. The ring I'd saved for a year to buy. "I can't live like this," she said, trembling but resolute. "I need a man who lives big, who does something with his life, not someone who just holds an axe and dreams of the forest." She walked out, the door slamming shut. Just days later, Amber went public with her new relationship, with Curtis. My younger brother, with his $1 million mansion and triumphant smile. I sat in my empty apartment, clutching the ring, feeling everything I'd believed in, love, family, loyalty, melt away like snow under the sun. I'd lost my parents. I'd lost Amber. And now I felt like I'd lost myself. In the days after Amber left, I lived trapped in a blizzard, unable to see, hearing only the howling wind in my mind. I avoided Curtis, avoided the diner. Every street corner felt like a reminder of betrayal. I couldn't stay in Anchorage. I needed to breathe, to rediscover myself. I decided to head to the cabin in Fairbanks, my parents' legacy, though everyone else saw it as rotting wood. The journey was long and cold, a trip back to my childhood. I drove my father's old beat-up truck through snow-covered roads, flanked by endless pine forests. Every tree, every hill stirred memories. "The land is our mother," my father's voice echoed. "You have to listen, respect it, and the land will answer." I wondered if Mother Earth was answering me now or merely punishing me. The cabin came into view. Smaller than I remembered. Sagging roof, grayed walls, dusty windows, rotting planks, a chimney that looked like it could collapse. I pushed the door open. Hinges screeched like a lament. Inside, cold, damp, smelling of rotting wood and earth. Faint light illuminated the cracked floor. The attic corner where I slept, the fireplace my mother tended, the small table where my father carved my name. Empty. A house without a soul. I sat on the floor, letting the pain wash over me. I thought of the will, of my parents choosing Curtis, of Amber choosing him. I started cleaning. Swept dust, cleared broken wood, wiped the fireplace. Trying to fix a loose floorboard, I noticed a strange hollow sound. Curiosity got the better of me. I used my father's knife to pry it up. A small wooden compartment, hidden deep under the floor. Inside, an old, rusted metal box. My hands trembled as I opened it. A carefully folded map, paper yellowed, lines drawn in black ink with symbols in an Alaska Native language, characters my father had taught me. I spread it out. Winding lines led deep into the forest. Some areas marked with a triangle, mineral deposits. Others with a black droplet, oil. Layered lines, valuable timber. In the corner, my father's handwriting, "True value lies not in what you take, but in what you keep." I read it over and over, hearing his voice. I leaned closer, tracing each line, my heart pounding. The marked lands, if the notes were accurate, held resources worth hundreds of millions of dollars. A treasure beyond anything I'd ever dreamed. I sat silently in the rotting cabin, clutching the map, my entire life hanging in the balance. Part of me screamed to shout to the world that I wasn't a failure, not the wilderness fool Amber had mocked. I held a fortune. Richer than Curtis, richer than anyone. But another part, the part my father had patiently shaped, whispered, "Not everything that can be taken should be taken. The land is our mother, and she must be preserved, not stripped bare." My heart tore itself apart. I didn't know what to do. I brought the map back to my Anchorage apartment, hiding it in a locked drawer. Every night, I stared at it. I imagined selling the information, getting revenge on Curtis. Amber coming back, her eyes sparkling. But then I remembered my father. Mother Earth is sacred. Taking too much is betrayal. My mother, happiness isn't in money. I decided to keep the secret. To neither exploit nor sell. To honor my parents' legacy, even if it meant. I remained just Francis Nonick, man of the woods. But Mother Earth, my father said, always has ways of testing us. A month after my parents' disappearance, I decided to hold a small gathering to honor them. The people who raised me, who left me with lessons that couldn't fade. A quiet space at my mother's diner. The smell of fresh bread, coffee, like a piece of her soul. I arranged chairs, placed a photo of them. Familiar faces arrived, bringing flowers, condolences. Aunt Mary hugged me, tears streaming. Old Joe, who hunted with my father, patted my shoulder. I forced a smile, but felt only emptiness inside. Curtis arrived late, as usual, Amber at his side. Seeing her, my heart crushed. She held his hand, smiling lightly as he whispered to her. I turned away, focusing on coffee cups, but the image clung to me like salt in a wound. The memorial began. People shared memories. Aunt Mary spoke of my mother's bread. Joe recounted hunting trips with my father. I spoke too, my voice trembling, about nights by the fire, about Mother Earth, about true value not in money, but integrity. But when it was Curtis's turn, he stood briefly, saying only a few words. Mom and Dad were amazing people. They worked hard to give us a better life. I'll always be grateful. He sat down. Amber clapped, her eyes full of pride. I searched for sincerity, but found only shallowness. He spoke like it was a prepared speech, not from the heart. I wanted to scream, but held back, clenching my fists, trying to stay calm. After the sharing, people chatted, ate. I stood in a corner, feeling out of place. Then Curtis and Amber approached, glasses of wine in hand. Well, big brother, Curtis mocked, this memorial's not half bad, but you know, Mom and Dad would probably be prouder if you did something bigger than this little diner. Amber giggled, her eyes cold, sharp as a knife. Their words ignited a fire. I'd had enough. Enough of his taunts, her scorn, the constant belittling. I shot to my feet, my voice trembling with rage. You think I'm nothing, don't you? The room fell silent. You think I'm just a failure with a rotting cabin? Well, I have something neither of you will ever have. I paused, heart pounding, knowing I was going too far, but unable to stop. I found a map in the cabin. A map pointing to mineral deposits, oil, precious timber. Worth over $500 million. You hear me? $500 million. The room went deathly quiet. The air so thick I could hear my own heartbeat. Dozens of eyes blurred. Only Curtis and Amber stood out. Curtis's face paled, then twisted into a greedy smile, his eyes gleaming as if he'd already touched the gold. Francis, he said, shaky but eager, are you serious? Or did you just lose it and blurt that out? Amber was different. She leaned back, arms crossed, a mocking smirk. Oh, come on, Francis. Another one of your attention-grabbing stunts. A treasure? Sounds like a children's book. My throat tightened. I turned and left the diner in silence, ignoring the murmurs rising behind me. I had just revealed the biggest secret of my life. I knew there was no going back. Curtis, with his insatiable greed, would pursue it to the end. Amber, with her cold pretense, would find a way to exploit it. The biting winds stung my skin as I stepped outside, snow falling heavily, as weighty as the gaze of Mother Earth. Everything seemed to be watching, waiting to see what I would do next. Just days after the memorial, the real storm began. Curtis wasted no time. The next morning, a letter was slipped under my door. Cold words of a law firm. Curtis had filed a lawsuit against me, accusing me of concealing family inheritance assets. The map, it claimed, was part of the Nonick family legacy, and I was intentionally trying to keep it. I read it over and over, my heart pounding not from fear, but from a wildfire rage. My brother, who once held my hand, was now dragging me to court. But he didn't stop there. He spread rumors like toxic wind through Anchorage. Aunt Mary told me Curtis was going around high society parties, family gatherings, telling anyone who'd listen that I was a selfish man hiding a $500 million treasure. Francis thinks he can keep it all to himself. He'd feign indignation. He's not thinking of the family, not of Mom and Dad. His words spread like fire. Soon, the entire city had heard. Distant relatives began circling like vultures. Uncle Carl, whom I'd met only a handful of times, called, his voice sweet as honey. Francis, how you holding up? Heard you found something interesting in your parents' cabin, huh? He asked, as if we were old pals. Families gotta stick together, Francis. If there's something valuable, you should share it with everyone, right? Don't let people think you're selfish. I gripped the phone, trying to keep steady. Uncle, I'm not keeping anything. It's just a map, and I haven't done anything with it. But Carl wouldn't let up. He laughed loudly. Don't play coy with me, Francis. If you don't share, people won't be happy. You don't want the whole clan turning their backs on you, do you? His threat cut deep. Others, distant friends, even strangers, started reaching out. Someone texted, suggesting I split the profits from resource extraction. An old neighbor stopped by the diner. Francis, do the right thing. Don't let people think you're greedy. I looked at them, faces once familiar, now twisted by greed. I wanted to scream that I wasn't planning to take anything, that I only wanted to protect Mother Earth. but I knew they wouldn't understand. To them, I wasn't Francis, the man of the woods. I was just the guy holding a treasure they wanted a piece of. The tabloid media jumped in like sharks. One morning, the local paper screamed, "Alaska man hoards $500 million family treasure." The article, riddled with fabrications, called me a selfish son, a disloyal heir trying to steal from my brother and family. Reporters loitered outside the diner, cameras flashing. "Francis, tell us about the map," one shouted. "What are you going to do with $500 million? I kept my head down, pushing past them, feeling hunted. Every step, I felt the city's eyes, like I was a criminal. Worse, the cabin in Fairbanks, my sacred childhood home, became a center of morbid curiosity. A friend called to warn me that locals were lurking, even sneaking in. I drove there, and the sight broke my heart. The fence was torn down, windows smashed, the yard littered with haphazard holes. My sacred cabin violated. I stood in the yard, snow falling silently. It felt like the land was weeping with me. Amber, of course, couldn't stay out of it. One evening, she appeared at my apartment door, wearing an expensive fur coat, her eyes soft, like they used to be. "Francis," she whispered, her voice so sweet it sent chills down my spine. "I'm sorry for what happened. I was wrong. You're not a failure. You have that map. We could do something big together." I looked at her, seeing a stranger. She hadn't come back for love or understanding. She came back for the $500 million, for the glamour she thought I could now provide. "Get out," I said, my voice cold as ice. "I don't need you, and I don't need your lies." She froze, her lips tightening, then turned and walked away, leaving me with a heavy loneliness. I was cornered, like a beast surrounded by wolves. Alone, I faced Curtis's greed, Amber's deceit, and the relentless harassment from relatives and media. Each day, the pressure grew heavier, an unending blizzard. I began to wonder if I was wrong, if I should just give up the map, share it, and live the big life. But every time that thought crossed my mind, I heard my father's voice. "The land is our mother, and you must protect her." I clutched the map, hidden in the drawer, and told myself I wouldn't betray my parents' legacy, no matter the cost. The tension escalated to a breaking point, and I felt like I was standing on the edge of a cliff with no way out. But I didn't know that just when everything seemed lost, a greater truth was waiting, ready to reveal the final answer. 2 months later, the inheritance dispute between my brother and me officially began. The Anchorage sky was cloaked in heavy gray, as if nature itself was growling at the storm about to erupt. I stepped into the courtroom, my heart aching, feeling like a trapped animal surrounded by the cold stares of lawyers, the sternness of the judge, and the curious gazes of strangers there to watch the drama unfold. Curtis sat across from me, his eyes sharp and cold, a confident smirk on his mouth, as if victory was already his. Beside him, Amber, in a dazzling gown, but her eyes avoided mine, the man she once called her love. I clenched my rough hands inside my father's old jacket, my breath heavy as I tried to stay calm. Deep down, I wanted to scream that I didn't care about money, that all I wanted was to protect my parents' legacy. But I knew in this room, no one truly cared. The judge, a middle-aged man with a deep, stern voice, banged his gavel. Curtis's lawyer stood, his voice sharp and accusing, alleging I had hidden the map, a shared asset, and demanded the court force me to surrender it for equal division. "Francis Nanak has deliberately tried to monopolize an inheritance worth $500 million, he declared. "He has not only betrayed his brother, but also the family and the values his parents left behind." His words were daggers, slicing deep into my pride. I wanted to stand up, to say I never intended to keep anything for myself, that I only wanted to preserve Mother Earth, but my court-appointed lawyer told me to stay quiet. I looked at Curtis. He was smiling. That same triumphant grin from the day Gunnar read the will. Amber held his hand, her eyes sparkling with pride. But I knew it wasn't for Curtis. It was for the $1 million mansion and the glamour she thought he brought. I bowed my head, trying to focus on my father's words. True value lies not in what you take, but in what you keep. But in this room, surrounded by greedy stares and accusations, I felt like I was losing. Everything I believed in felt meaningless. Then, just as the judge was about to ask me his first question, the courtroom door swung open. A cold gust of wind rushed in, accompanied by murmurs. I looked up. My heart stopped. Standing in the doorway, with a familiarity that hurt, were my parents. Elias Nanak and Kelly Nanak. My father, tall and sturdy, black hair tied back, eyes sharp as a blade. My mother, gentle, golden hair, warm smile, though her eyes now carried a hint of sternness. The courtroom was stunned. Gasps turned to shocked whispers, then silence. My father stepped forward, his deep voice resonating through the room. "We're not dead, and we have something to say." I sat there, unable to believe my eyes. Curtis jumped up, his face pale, mouth agape, as if he'd seen a ghost. Amber gripped his hand tightly, her eyes filled with panic, as if she knew everything was about to collapse. The judge banged his gavel, calling for order, but even he couldn't hide his astonishment. "Mr. and Mrs. Nanak," he said, his voice trembling slightly. "Please explain." My father stepped up to the stand, my mother beside him, her hand gently on his shoulder. "Everything you've seen, the plane crash, the will, the map, was a test," my father began, his voice steady, like when he taught me about Mother Earth. "We wanted to see which of our two sons was worthy of inheriting our ancestors' legacy. Not money, not land, but the values we've spent our lives protecting." He looked at me, then at Curtis, his gaze sharp, but not judgmental. "We faked our disappearance to see what you would do when faced with temptation." The courtroom held its breath. My head spun, as if the ground beneath me was shaking. Curtis shook his head, stammering. "Dad, Mom, what kind of joke is this? I inherited the mansion, the assets. The lawyer said so." Gunnar, who had been sitting in the corner, stood up, his voice calm but clear. "That will was fake, Curtis," he said. "At your parents' request, I presented a fabricated will to test you and your brother. The beachfront mansion in Miami, the liquid assets, they all still belong to Mr. and Mrs. Nanak." Curtis was stunned, as if he'd been slept. Amber let go of his hand, her eyes frantic, darting from Curtis to me, then to my parents. I sat there, my heart pounding, not from joy, but from realization. My father continued, his voice low but powerful. "The map Francis found was also fake. Another test. The symbols and information on it were entirely fabricated. If Francis had let greed cloud his judgment, if he had tried to sell those secrets, he would have gained nothing and lost everything. But Francis chose to stay silent, to keep the secret and honor Mother Earth, just as I taught him. But you, Curtis," he looked at Curtis, his eyes sad but not angry, "you let greed guide you. You sued your brother, spread rumors, and treated money as everything. You are not worthy of the Nanak name." Curtis bowed his head, unable to speak. Amber, pale as a ghost, stood up and stepped toward me. "Francis," she whispered, her voice trembling. "I was wrong. I shouldn't have left you. We can start over, right?" I looked at her, her eyes now pleading, but all I saw was deceit. "No, Amber," I said, my voice cold as ice. "You chose Curtis for money, and now you're coming back for money. I don't need you." Amber stood there, humiliated, then burst into tears like a child. Meanwhile, the judge, still in shock, declared the lawsuit dismissed. My parents approached me. My mother hugged me tightly, tears streaming down her cheeks. "You did the right thing, Francis," she whispered. "You're the son we've always been proud of." Curtis, now empty-handed, fell to his knees before our parents in the courtroom. "I'm sorry," he choked out, sobbing. "I was wrong. Please give me a chance." My father looked at him, his gaze stern but not unforgiving. "You'll have a chance, Curtis," he said. "But you must prove yourself worthy. Live a year in the forest as I did, and learn to respect Mother Earth. If you can do that, you'll have what you deserve." Curtis nodded, tears streaming down his face, and I saw a glimpse of the little boy who used to hold my hand years ago. That evening in the old wooden cabin in Fairbanks, where memories of my childhood still lingered in every weathered plank, I sat with my parents for the first time since those agonizing months when I thought I'd lost them forever. The firelight from the old hearth danced, casting flickering shadows on the walls. My father, with the rugged presence of an Inuit man, sat in an old wooden chair, his hands clasped, his sharp eyes softened with affection as he looked at me. My mother, her golden hair now streaked with silver, sat beside me, her gentle hand resting on mine, warm as it was when she used to stroke my hair as a child. They told me their story. A story of survival, of love, and of unwavering faith in me. After the plane crash, my father began, his voice deep like the wind rustling through the pines. We were stranded in the icy mountains with no phone, no signal, no hope. But I learned from your grandfather, from the Inuit before him, that Mother Earth never abandons her children if they know how to listen. He spoke of long days in the biting cold, how he built fires from the smallest twigs, hunted snow hares to feed my mother, and constructed a shelter from snow and stone to withstand the storms. With every step, I thought of you and Curtis, he said, his eyes softening. I told myself that if we survived, I had to do something to make you understand. Understand that true value lies not in what you have, but in who you are. My mother squeezed my hand tighter, her eyes glistening with tears, but her smile still warm as the rare Alaskan summer sun. Francis, you are our pride, she said, her voice choked with emotion, but filled with love. When you were young, I watched you chop firewood, wade into rivers to catch fish, and I knew you were stronger than anyone, not because you were taller or stronger, but because you had the heart of Mother Earth, honest, resilient, and never betraying what your father taught you. She paused, wiping a tear. When we decided to fake our deaths, I was terrified. Terrified that you'd hurt, that you'd think we'd abandoned you. But I believed in you. Believed that you wouldn't let greed guide you, that you'd hold on to our family's legacy. I sat there, in the familiar wooden cabin, feeling as if I were back in those nights by the fire, listening to my father's stories, my mother's lullabies through blizzards. Their words were like a flame warming my heart, thawing the chill of those lonely months. We wanted to see who you were when we were gone, my mother continued, her eyes locking onto mine, as if to etch every word into my soul. And you, Francis, gave us the answer. You didn't choose money, didn't choose glory. You chose Mother Earth, chose what we taught you. You are the son we've always been proud of. My father stood and walked to the hearth, where the firelight illuminated his face, highlighting its weathered but compassionate lines. He pulled a small wooden box from his coat pocket, intricately carved with Inuit patterns, a gift I recognized from my grandfather to him. This is the real map, he said, handing it to me. You have full authority over this map, to exploit it or preserve it. The choice is yours, but I trust you'll do the right thing, as you always have. I took the box, my hands trembling, feeling as if I were holding the entire legacy of our ancestors. I opened it and found a different map, drawn on animal hide, its lines meticulously detailed. It wasn't just a map. It was a promise, a responsibility, the soul of Mother Earth. I looked at my parents, tears streaming down my face, not from sorrow, but from the realization that they had never abandoned me. I'll keep it, I said, my voice thick with emotion. I'll protect it as you have, as our ancestors have. My mother came closer, hugging me tightly, as she did when I was a child. My father placed his hand on my shoulder, his gaze steadfast, but filled with love. And now, in the old wooden cabin, amid the crackling fire and the warm voices of my parents, I suddenly understood. True value doesn't lie in money, in mansions, or in treasures. It lies in character, in how we protect our legacy, in how we live true to our beliefs. I gripped the real map tightly, knowing with certainty that I would never exploit it. I would preserve it, as my parents had, as our ancestors had, so that Mother Earth would remain Mother Earth, forever.